Ever found yourself endlessly waiting for a reply from someone who just won't text back? You feel ignored, confused, and maybe even frustrated. But what if I told you that this situation isn't a reflection of your worth, but a hidden opportunity to flip the script? In today's video, we're diving into a Stoic approach to handling silence and rejection with power and control. It's not about playing games or manipulating. This is about becoming your strongest, most resilient self. You'll learn why her silence doesn't define you and how, with the right mindset, you can transform this situation into a massive boost for your confidence and self-worth. Imagine not just handling being ignored, but thriving because of it. We're going to cover actionable steps, from staying calm and unbothered to embracing the power of silence and detachment. By the end of this video, you won't be reacting to someone else's behavior. You'll be responding with poise and purpose. Stick around to discover how to harness the timeless wisdom of Stoicism to take control, build your confidence, and make sure you're the one setting the pace in any relationship. 1. Set boundaries for emotional investment. I'll admit there was a time in my life when I didn't understand the importance of setting boundaries, especially when it came to emotional investment. I used to pour all my energy into someone I liked, hoping that by giving more, I'd somehow win their affection. But you know what I learned the hard way? Over-investing emotionally in someone who doesn't reciprocate is like pouring water into a bucket with a hole. It never fills up, and eventually you're the one left drained. There was this woman I really liked. We'd been texting for weeks and everything seemed to be going great, until one day she just stopped responding. No explanation, no reason, just silence. I remember checking my phone obsessively, rereading our previous conversations, trying to figure out where I went wrong. It consumed me to the point where I wasn't focused at work, skipped the gym, and felt like I was in a constant state of anxiety. One day, a good friend of mine said something that hit me like a ton of bricks. "Why are you giving so much power to someone who can't even send a text back? You're worth more than that." That's when it clicked. I realized I was investing my time, emotions, and energy into someone who clearly wasn't doing the same for me. Worse, I wasn't leaving anything for myself. That's when I knew I needed to set boundaries. Not for her, but for me. Here's what I did. I stopped reaching out. I told myself that if someone values me, they'll show it without me having to chase them. It wasn't easy, trust me. There were days I'd stare at my phone, tempted to send another message, but I resisted. Instead, I redirected that energy into things that made me feel good about myself. I started running again, took up reading, and even reconnected with friends I hadn't seen in a while. It wasn't an overnight transformation, but with every small step, I started to feel more in control. What I learned during that time is this. Setting boundaries is not about punishing the other person. It's about protecting your peace and preserving your self-worth. It's saying, I deserve to be treated with the same effort and respect that I give. If someone isn't willing to meet you halfway, that's their loss, not yours. This doesn't mean I closed myself off from relationships, far from it. But now I approach them differently. I observe actions more than words. If someone consistently shows me that they're not as invested, I step back. No hard feelings, no drama, just a quiet acknowledgement that my energy is better spent elsewhere. Looking back, I'm actually grateful for the experience because it taught me a valuable lesson. I'm responsible for how I allow others to treat me. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's self-care, and in doing so, I've created space for the right people to enter my life, people who see my worth without me having to convince them. So, If you're in a situation where you feel ignored or undervalued, ask yourself, am I respecting my own boundaries? Am I investing too much into someone who's giving too little? If the answer is yes, it's time to pull back. Trust me, your future self will thank you. 2. Do nothing. And you know what? She started initiating more conversations, but by then, I'd learned something crucial. I didn't need her or anyone else to validate me. That realization ties perfectly into the second point, doing nothing. Doing nothing might sound counterintuitive, especially in a world where we're constantly told to take action or fix things. But when someone ignores you, sometimes the most powerful move is no move at all. This isn't about playing games or trying to manipulate the situation. It's about understanding that your value doesn't depend on someone else's attention or approval. I used to think silence was the enemy. If I didn't respond to being ignored, I felt like I was losing control, like I wasn't doing enough to salvage the situation. But in reality, constantly trying to fix something that isn't reciprocated only puts you in a weaker position. Chasing after someone who's ignoring you sends a clear message. Your validation is more important to me than my self-respect. And let me tell you, that's not a message you want to send. So, the next time someone goes silent, here's what you do. Nothing. Don't send another text. Don't check their social media, and definitely don't overthink the situation. Instead, redirect that energy into yourself. When I say do nothing, I mean resist the urge to react emotionally or impulsively. Let their silence speak for itself and respond with your own silence. This isn't a game, it's a statement of strength. I remember one instance when doing nothing completely shifted the dynamic. A woman I had been talking to suddenly stopped replying after what seemed like a great conversation. My instinct was to follow up and ask if everything was okay, but I stopped myself. I decided to let her be, and instead focused on my own life. I went to the gym, worked on a side project I'd been putting off, and spent time with friends. To my surprise, a few days later, she reached out with an apology, saying she'd been overwhelmed with work. By doing nothing, I showed that I wasn't dependent on her response to maintain my sense of self-worth. And even if she hadn't reached out, it wouldn't have mattered. I had already moved on and spent that time building myself up instead of tearing myself down with overthinking. The power of doing nothing lies in the message it sends. I am not controlled by your actions or your silence. I control how I feel, and I choose to focus on myself. This approach not only strengthens your emotional resilience, but also makes you more attractive. Why? Because people are naturally drawn to those who are confident, self-assured, and unaffected by external circumstances. So, the next time you're tempted to double text or obsess over someone's lack of response, stop and remind yourself, sometimes the strongest action is inaction. Doing nothing allows you to reclaim your emotional energy, preserve your dignity, and focus on what truly matters: you. 3. Reframe rejection as redirection. It took me a long time to see rejection differently. For years, every time someone ignored me, I felt like I'd failed. I'd replay conversations in my head, analyzing every word, wondering what I did wrong. I couldn't see it for what it truly was. Not a dead end, but a redirection towards something better. One of the most empowering lessons I've learned is that rejection is rarely personal. Often it's a sign that the person or situation isn't aligned with who you are or where you're headed. Instead of focusing on what you're losing, focus on what you're gaining. The opportunity to grow, the chance to focus on yourself, and the space to invite something or someone more compatible into your life. I remember a specific time when I was texting someone I really liked. We had great conversations, but suddenly she stopped replying. I was crushed. I felt like I had messed up, and for weeks I couldn't let it go. But in the process of obsessing over her silence, I realized something. I had put her on a pedestal. I was so focused on winning her over that I had forgotten about my own needs and goals. Her ignoring me forced me to take a step back and reevaluate. I decided to reframe her rejection as a redirection. Instead of seeing her silence as a reflection of my worth, I saw it as a sign that I needed to realign my priorities. I threw myself into the things I'd been neglecting, working out, learning a new skill, and reconnecting with old friends. And you know what? Over time, I started to feel grateful for the experience. Her lack of interest freed me to focus on myself in a way I hadn't in years. What I learned is that rejection is not the end of the story. It's the beginning of a new chapter. Every time someone closes a door, they're creating space for something better to come into your life. It might be a deeper connection with yourself, a new passion, or even someone who appreciates you for who you truly are. Now, whenever I face rejection, I remind myself, this is redirection. I think about all the times something didn't work out, only for something better to follow. Maybe that job you didn't get led to an even better opportunity. Maybe the relationship that didn't work out taught you lessons that prepared you for the love of your life. It's all about perspective. When you reframe rejection as redirection, you take the power back. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of someone else's choices and start seeing yourself as the creator of your own destiny. So, the next time someone ignores you, ask yourself, what am I being redirected toward? What can I gain from this experience? By shifting your focus from what you've lost to what you can gain, you'll find that rejection isn't something to fear. It's something to embrace. 4. Shift the focus back to you. When someone ignores you, it's easy to get caught up in the whirlwind of questions. Why aren't they responding? Did I do something wrong? Are they talking to someone else? I've been there, and I know how quickly those thoughts can spiral out of control. But the truth is, the more energy you give to someone who isn't reciprocating, the more you're neglecting the most important person in your life, yourself. I learned this lesson during a particularly rough time. I was texting someone I thought was interested in me, but suddenly her replies stopped coming. I wasted so much time refreshing my phone, hoping for a message that never came. My mood was tied to her actions, and my entire day could be ruined by her silence. Then one day, I looked in the mirror and thought, why am I letting someone else control my happiness like this? That moment was a turning point. I decided to shift the focus back to myself. Instead of obsessing over her lack of response, I redirected that energy into my own growth. I started hitting the gym more consistently, working toward a goal I had neglected. I picked up a new hobby, photography, that gave me a creative outlet and a sense of accomplishment. I even started catching up with friends I hadn't spoken to in a while. Something amazing happened when I made myself the priority. Not only did I feel better, but I also started attracting better energy into my life. The more I focused on becoming the best version of myself, the less I cared about whether or not she texted me back. I realized that my self-worth wasn't tied to her attention. It came from within. Here's what I discovered. When you shift the focus back to yourself, you become magnetic. People are naturally drawn to those who are passionate about their goals, confident in their abilities, and fully engaged in their own lives. It's not about pretending to be busy or trying to make someone jealous. It's about genuinely investing in your growth and happiness. Think about a time when you were deeply focused on something that mattered to you, whether it was a fitness goal, a creative project, or a career milestone. Remember how good it felt to wake up every day with purpose. That's the energy you need to channel. When you're locked in on your own mission, you stop worrying about who's texting you back because you're too busy building a life you're proud of. The next time someone ignores you, use it as a wake-up call. Ask yourself, am I spending my energy wisely? Am I giving more attention to this person than I'm giving to myself? If the answer is yes, it's time to make a change. Hit the gym, dive into a project, reconnect with friends, or explore a new passion. Whatever you do, make sure it's for you. By shifting the focus back to yourself, you reclaim your power. You show that your happiness doesn't depend on someone else's attention, but on your own choices and actions. That's the kind of confidence that not only feels amazing, but also draws the right people into your life. 5. Use reverse psychology. One of the most surprising lessons I've learned in situations where someone ignores you is the power of reverse psychology. It's not about being manipulative or playing mind games. It's about showing strength by refusing to react emotionally or desperately. When you stop chasing someone's attention, you shift the entire dynamic in your favor. I'll never forget a time when I unintentionally used reverse psychology and saw how effective it could be. There was a woman I'd been texting, and suddenly she went silent. My initial instinct was to send another message or ask if I'd done something wrong. But I held back, mainly because I was tired of feeling like I was chasing people who didn't value my effort. So, instead of double texting, I decided to focus on my own life. I went out with friends, started posting about my fitness progress, and genuinely enjoyed myself. A week later, she messaged me out of the blue. "Hey, you've been quiet lately. Everything okay?" I was taken aback because I hadn't done anything to provoke her response, other than choosing to live my life without waiting for her attention.